I want to welcome everyone to the second of 7 sessions about business planning for agritourism enterprises. My name is Lisa Chase. I'm with the University of Vermont Extension and the Vermont Tourism Research Center. This webinar is hosted jointly by the Global Agritourism Network and also the National Extension Tourism Network Agritourism Working Group, based in the US, but open to everyone. And you may have noticed that there was no fee to join this webinar or to use the resources that we're going to be talking about today. That is because funding was provided by a grant from the Northeast Extension Risk Management Center. Today, on this second session, we're going to be talking about operations. And with me is Lindsay Paschow from Cornell Cooperative Extension, Harvest, New York, and also she has her own farm, Adirondack View Lavender. I'll give her a better introduction in just a minute, but before we dive into our topic of operations, I wanted to get a sense to see who was here in the room with us today. Lindsay, could you move to the next slide?
Stop, go ahead.
So we have a few quick polls, and I'll launch these polls. And for those of you who like multitasking, feel free to type into chat and do the polls at the same time, or do them one at a time. And we'll start with, let's see, the first poll asks, are you new to this series? So I'm ending the poll and sharing the results. So it looks like about 2/3 were here live. That is impressive. A little over 10% caught up with the recording, and about a quarter are new. So we'll do a balance. We'll definitely touch on everything we talked about last week, but we won't go into too much detail. And for those of you who are new here today, know that we do have the recording and resources from last week posted on our website. We've got another question for you, which is, did you do your homework? And I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And it looks like about 20% did the full homework. Congratulations. Another third got started. They're working on it. 15% are planning to. Nope, not interested, no time, SAP is running, whatever your reason, that's okay, we understand. And then, so for those of you who are wondering what the homework was about, last week we talked about the general overview of a business plan and also writing your business description. I encourage you to look back at if you like watching videos, you can watch the whole video or at least look at the PowerPoint slides from last week and the resources, and then dive into AgPlan if you like AgPlan and start working on your business description. If you do want to kind of follow the structure we've laid out and get a complete business plan by the end of March. I'm going to stop sharing that, and we've got one last question. This one's about AgPlan. I think we learned early on that pretty much everyone was new to AgPlan who was joining this webinar. So we're kind of wondering at how AgPlan is working for you. And I already see some responses coming in for what is AgPlan anyway? AgPlan is a business planning template that's run by the Center for Farm Financial Management out of the University of Minnesota. I'll share the results now. Okay, you should be able to see the results now. And it looks like over half of the people did use AgPlan for their homework. Some of you are trying, you're working on it. I get it. And I just want to say, for those who said, no, I prefer doing it a different way, that is totally fine. Paper, Word doc, hieroglyphics, cave drawings, whatever works for you to get your business plan out of your head and onto paper or computer, a painting, whatever works for you is the important thing in the beginning as you're trying to get it down. And for those of you who like having a structured template on a website, AgPlan may be very helpful. For those of you who don't, no worries. You can do your business plan, in Word or whatever you would like to do. And I will, at the very end of this session, and also on our website, we've got contact information for the Center for Farm Financial Management. And they said they are putting on extra staffing for this 7-week session. So they have an email, they have a US-based phone number. If you want to talk to a person, you can go out and reach directly to them. I'm stopping sharing now. And thanks for bearing with me through those 3 quick poll questions. And I'm now going to turn it over to our featured presenter today, Lindsay Pashow. She is a statewide agriculture business development and marketing specialist at Harvest New York, which is part of Cornell Cooperative Extension. She focuses on agritourism, marketing, cut flowers, craft beverages, and produce auctions. She is the vice chair of the Global Agritourism Network, Sustainable and Regenerative Agriculture and Agritourism Committee. And she's also a co-chair of the National Extension Tourism Agritourism Working Group. And in her free time, when she's not doing all this other stuff, she owns her own farm, Adirondack View Lavender in Keysville, New York. Lindsay, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about operations, part of the business plan. One thing, as we go through the next couple slides and stuff, there will be parts where we'll be asking you to take out like a piece of paper and a pen and pencil and, jot some information down. If you want to jump into AgPlan, and we can drop that link in the chat. You can start, you could start filling that out if you'd rather just start typing in AgPlan versus pen and paper. I'm a pen and paper person. I've been that way for a long time. But now I actually have a business plan and AgPlan too. So in the operations section, we're going to be looking at the different products that we're producing and how we manage those specific products. And what we want to do is describe what we're producing and how we're producing those specific products. All this, information is very important in your business plan, especially if you're going to have somebody review it for financing, or if somebody ever needed to take over your operation. So it's really important to go into detail about, every single specific product that you're making. In the operations part of this, we're going to go over, your products and services, the different production system, like how you're producing that specific product. If you use customer service, we're all involved in agritourism, so customer service is going to be involved in your business plan. How you, potentially inventory management your products, any licensing and permits and regulations you might have, patents or trademarks, and some if you have environmental issues in your operation, quality control, and also the implementation timeline. This includes implementation of when you're developing products, how things are operate in your operations. So why is this section important? This gives us an overall view of what type of risks that are involved, the different environmental issues, licensing permits and regulations, that quality control and customer service. And, this is something that, also, if you have family members that are involved in your operations, how they are also being kind of handled correctly in handling these different sections of your business plan. And one of the things that I like about the operations sections, is when I think about all the productions that I am producing in my business. So, you want to describe what those products you produce and the production levels you're achieving on those. So I think about on my farm operation, I do a lot of value-added products. I make body butter, I make lip balms, I make mist, I make wreaths, flower arrangements, but also products that I think of too when it comes to agritourism is my U-Pick, the U-Pick that I have, the workshops that I have. Those are all important things to be including when you're thinking about the products. And then, this is what I jumped ahead and I said, these are all the multiple products that I have for my operation. So I want to describe each of those products and how they're important to my business. And then, potentially if you're planning to produce new products. So that's always another thing with your farm operation is like, what else am I going to producing? How else can I make revenue? Because when our agritourism operation, the purpose really with agritourism is to bring people to the farm, to have these on-farm activities, but they're also there to, generate revenue for the farm. So all those products you're producing are really important to make sure that you're highlighting in your business plan and what you can produce in the future. So when you think about the operations part, the services you're providing, and that's more like that U-Pick part of your operations plan. So you want to describe, so for me, I have U-Pick lavender. I have U-Pick lavender 4 weekends a year on Saturday and Sunday from 10 till 4 o'clock. I also like to probably in this little section, I would probably add in like how much potential revenue I'd like to make off of the U-Pick and like my value added products. And, also the thing that we do on the farm is host workshops on those U-Pick days. So we're trying to grab as much revenue too. So that's my other multiple services I think about when I think about the services that I'm providing in the farm. And then think about what potentially you can move into. So an example for my farm is I think about maybe lavender broom making, lavender crowns, anything I can use my products in the farm to continue to generate revenue. And I also have to think about, is the public interested in these different services, these different workshops that I'm providing on the farm? And then we have to think about how are our products and services, you might also discuss in the section like how and what you specialize in the products and in a few products, diversify your line of your products. So think about, how else, those specific products you're producing. So I think with a lot of our agritourism operations, like I keep giving examples of different farm products I'm producing and the services, I'm trying to diversify my farm and all the different products I'm producing. So it's important to really push in this section the potential ways you can continue to diversify your line of products that you're producing. So we're going to take, let's see, maybe 4 minutes, we'll say, for everybody to grab a piece of paper and spend some time thinking about what you're producing on your farm and how you're producing those different services. You write down all the products, and then on the next couple slides, we're going to look more into like kind of more that product development part.
So a really interesting question that somebody asked, or that a couple of people asked is, how do you ascertain the interest in your products and services? This is the market research question. Mm-hmm. And we are talking about marketing next week, but, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts right now that you want to share for answering this question.
Well, and I think too, like, I've experienced over the years, you try to develop as many products as possible to fill your shelf and have people be buying those. But over time, just like I think anything that is on the market, you see that things work and things don't work. And also, what do you want to do for your operation? What don't you want to do? do you want to be spending all that time making 4-ounce candles? You know, little bit 4-ounce candles versus a 20-ounce candles, which you might end up getting 25 to 30 bucks. Like I think over time you determine like what different products you want to do. And also the services, like when you think too about services is, depending on what state you live in and their determination, what agritourism is like, baby showers and weddings and stuff might sound really good initially to a farm operation, but then you look into it and you're like, well, I don't like people that are rowdy on my property, walking all over the place. Like, I think you get to a point with your operation that you find out what things you like to do and what things you don't want to do. And you especially determine based on the revenue that you're making, is like this worth pursuing or not. And the other thing too, is if you're looking to jump into like starting to do workshops, is really ask your customers, are they interested in taking that wreath making class? How much are they willing to pay? When they say, we're willing to pay $25 and you charge $40 to, already finished wreath, you kind of wonder, no, that's not worth my time. I might as well just, sell them off the shelf for 40 bucks instead. So it is a lot of market research when it gets down to it, and determination over time.
And we're going to be covering more about that. Lindsay also mentioned the revenues, projected revenues. We're going to be covering more about that in other sessions. So I would say for those of you who are like, but right now, what should I put down? I would say for now, be expansive. If you're thinking about it, put it down. And this is what the business planning process is about, getting more realistic. Actually, I was talking to someone who works for the Small Business Development Corporation in Vermont, and he described himself as a dream crusher. So people come to him, ask for help with business planning. He goes through the whole process and the numbers, and in the end, sometimes he says, yeah, no, this is not going to work for you if you actually want to make money off of this. So not that that's necessarily going to be your situation, but for now, be expansive. We had another really good question from Jamie, which was, if you're adding a new enterprise, do you add these questions with what you are planning for or what already exists? And my quick answer is both. And be careful about making sure you're very clear in your business plan about what you're already doing and what you hope to add. Do you want to add to that, Lindsay?
That was perfect, Lisa.
Okay. And I will say that we've also had some great feedback. In chat, some people are asking questions, but like somebody asked about a goat farm, goat milk versus the bath products, how it's like two businesses, how do I combine them? And Carl put in an example of a farm they might want to look at. So what my point where I'm going here is, you're welcome to ask questions. You're also welcome to provide answers. We saw the registration list. We know that there are many people in this room who have so much experience and expertise in a lot of these areas that we're talking about. So we don't have to be the only ones providing information. We can crowdsource. Anyone with responses to questions in chat, feel free to answer them. So we have a question from someone wanting to address market research, pricing, product, pricing of competitors, etc. That is going to be covered, but not necessarily right now. So hang with us, Marjorie. We will get to it in this session. Not in this session. We will get to it in this series. Lindsay, how are we doing on time?
I think we should probably keep moving forward because we got a couple more little sections like this that we can do the questions for. Also, what we want to do in our business plan in regards to operation is we want to talk about how do we produce your product or service. So I'm just going to use candles just as an example. Like, you say you do like 4-ounce, 8-ounce, 10-ounce, 20-ounce different candles. Like, talk about the production process, like what your type of equipment you're using. So that gets into the technology you're going to be using. and you want to describe kind of the production system. You're not getting into like SOPs, like standard operating procedures. You're not jumping into that in your business plan, but you're looking at, giving an overview of how things are produced, and then maybe also think about how you can improve your production levels and efficiency. So I know a lot of people, when they start making candles, they make them on their stove in, like a little boiler system, and then they start moving into like larger size equipment. Those are, you have to think about ways that you can become more efficient versus spending, to basically like half an hour, melting down wax versus putting into a system, and it can be, melted in 10 minutes and they're ready to go to pour the candles. Okay, so now we're going to jump back to, you're going to just on a sheet of paper, you're going to, of those different products that you're thinking about, what are some of the production systems that you can use on your farm and why, and how long have they been implemented? And I'm going to use I'm going to go back to the candles for my lavender farm. Is I did the boiling on the stove for probably 3 years. Horrible experience. It took way too long. Now I've got a huge back container where I can just throw the wax in there, throw the color chips, melt it down, add the essential oil, and boom, pour it into the candle. So, you can talk about what you're using for equipment, and then how long you've been using it, and then like some of the efficiencies with it. And I'll let Lisa, if she's got some more questions, we can jump into another question, why people are, pen and paper. We'll do another like 4 minutes of just kind of writing some things on the paper.
For those of you who don't want to have homework afterwards, this is your chance to kind of do your homework, while we're in session. And for those who like multitasking, I know it can be frustrating for those who don't. So let's see, we got some really interesting questions in the Q&A boxes. One was kind of asking about the differences between products and services. So story time, ladies' night, those kind of weekly events. Typically we would think of those as services, and the products would be your apples or your garlic or your beef or whatever like kind of physical thing you're producing. But I am going to say this, business planning is very much an art, and there aren't really, such clear rules, but generally we would think of those as services. Does that make sense to you, Lindsay?
That was perfect, Lisa. Yep.
Okay. And another interesting question, which again, I'm giving that. It depends. I sound like an attorney here. It depends. So one person asked, so is this business plan just for the agritourism piece of my farm, which is the farm stay, or should I be answering these questions for all working parts of the farm? And, my quick answer to that is like, this is really a judgment call. There isn't a right way to do it. If you already have a really solid business plan for the rest of your farm, and you just want to do a separate one for your farm stay, that could work well. But if you don't yet have a business plan for the rest of your farm, and you're kind of thinking about how does the farm stay fit in with the holistic operation, then it can make sense to, while it may sound like a lot and it may sound a little overwhelming, it can make sense to do it all together. What are your thoughts, Lindsay?
Yeah, it's like, it is a preference. I know I like to streamline everything. But, by streamlining everything into one plan, the plan's going to be bigger. It could be, like Lisa said, it could be overwhelming, but it's, it's something, it depends on how you want to divide things. Cause, I look at my farm, I could divide just my lavender production in one section, and then I could move my value added products into the other. And then I could have my agritourism too. So I could have, if you think about it, I could have 2 or 3 business plans. I streamlined it into one to simplify it. So I want to jump to the next slide. So also in the section is we talk about our customer service. We can't get around customer service with agritourism. We're going to interact with the public no matter what. So this is a really important, I think, section to kind of dive in and describe like how you provide customer service and, you know, what type of levels too you think about customer service. So you know, and describe what you're good, you know, good at providing when it comes down to customer service and how you monitor to your customers. So thinking about like if you have a U-Pick operation, customer service, I mean, it basically starts as soon as that person walks out the door, almost, you know, the first person that they interact with, it might be somebody at the farm stand, it might be somebody directly in the field. So think about who's going to be involved with the customer service on your farm. You want to look at how do you have repeat customers, because that's going to be really important too, especially if you have a U-Pick operation, you want to continue to bring people back to pick the strawberries or the blueberries. Do any type of surveys with your customers to determine like how good your customer service is? Do you connect with your customers on social media? I understand sometimes social media can be frustrating, especially if somebody says something negative about an operation, but it's important to take the views from your customers, turn around to a positive, not react, but also try to look at that as, you know, ways that you can potentially improve your signage. I'll give you an example of one of my customers' negative reviews on social media this past year. We're like trying not to spend so much money on certain different things. We're trying to figure out where I want to spend money. And I do a lot of laminated, you know, no trespassing signs and this kind of stuff. I do have nice safety and agritourism act signs around my farm. But I was trying to go a little bit, you know, conservative on signage. And somebody said something negative about the signs getting wet. It happens when you live in a wet area in the Northeast. So I took that as, I think next year I'm going to spend maybe $1,000 on signage. Just that was the determination was like, I want to improve that. I appreciate the review. And I just, you know, I basically think the person moved on and thought of, you know, a positive voice spin of it. How do you handle quality or timing issues? And then how do you handle customer complaints? So like I mentioned, like we'll figure out a way to spin it into a positive. And the other thing is, do you have any guarantees, warranties, or return of policy? So I believe, you know, at most operations, that is the standard to have some type of like return policy, guarantees, and if something does happen. But like say you do hear from a customer that, you know, things didn't go well, picking, you know, sunflowers in the field. They were pretty much dead, or, you know, just they came out and it just wasn't what it was supposed to be. See, you know, offer them a potential to come back again, you know, on the farm and see if you can spin it around. Sometimes they won't take it, but figure out a way to kind of make it right with customers. Because as we know, when it comes down to positive negatives, the negatives always bounce to the top and people spread the negative versus sending the positive things towards on the operation. So also we're going to look at how inventory is managed on your farm operations. So if you're producing like those, you know, those value added products, how do you store those? Do you have like specific specialized storage facilities? So like if you're producing cheese, you know, refrigeration, if it's going to be, I know like usually like a lot of beauty products, it's like, especially if they're going to be more farm based, it's like a year has kind of been like the general rule. So those are kind of things you want to take and mention in your plan. And then how do you maintain the inventory and supplies? And do you have a reliable supplier too for like if you're going to have to get containers, or, you know, like wax to make candles or wicks, like making, that's all important things that you want to take and describe in your plan. You know, an example for like inventory of your product, you might, like, example, like use an Excel spreadsheet where you know how much you produce, how much has gone out. You might also use something in like a Square system, Squarespace. So there's a lot of different options out there how to maintain it, but that's something you want to describe in this section of the plan. And then I also do want to highlight, like, again, with that reliable supplier for products is like naming where you get products, because, you know, you should have it written down someplace. You know, are you purchasing from like Amazon, Candle Supply Company? Like there's a whole bunch of different, you know, suppliers out there, but having that written down in your business plan is an easy way to, you know where you bought your products to from. The other thing you want to list is your different licensing permits and regulations. So, you know, this allows you, if you're making changes, how likely you'll need any type of permits or license. You'll be able to identify the permits and license you need, when you need them, and the process to get them, and identify how to respond to major regulatory effects. So I have a New York State greenhouse license, so that's what I would write that down in here. I'd also write, you know, the date of when that was issued and also the date that it expires. Since that's a 2-year license, I'd write that down. The other license I would probably write down would be like a home processor license, to be able to make and this is a New York State license, is to be making like jellies and jams and cookies. So those would all be different licenses examples that I would put in this section. If you have any, you know, you know, patents or trademarks, you'd also write that down, you know, because that's important for like the prevention of commercialization of new ideas, inventions without the creator's permissions. So example would be like if you have any like plants in your on your property. So lavender, some plants do have patents on it. So I would write down in my business plan if I had patented plants. And then if like your farm operation had any trademarks, you know, like protected names, logos, that would be something that you'd want to identify. Because and also just as a heads up, if you have a logo, it doesn't mean that it's trademarked and somebody can't kind of steal those things. But if you went through the whole trademark process, that's something you'd want to take and mention in your business plan. And then the other thing that we always want to talk about is risk management, because it's very important for our farm operation. We always want to see like what potential risks we might have, and this is when it in regards to our production, our pricing, financial, legal, and human. And then the methods you're using to manage those particular risks. So, you know, one of the big, you know, risk is, you know, safety on a farm. You know, you're going to go through steps to take and limit the amount of risk, but you're going to want to have insurance. You want to have proper signage. And then you think about, you know, your pricing when it comes down to your different, your farm-based products. Like you don't want to price yourself out of the area just because your logo doesn't mean you should, you know, charge more. So make sure that you do, you know, look at what other people are charging for products, and then make sure that you price things based on that market. And then the other big thing too is I like this contingency plans of, you know, how you're going to be able to mitigate the risk, how much of, you know, safety on your farm, and, you know, your pricing, your finances, what risk, different steps you can take. And, you know, this jumps into something that's really important when it comes to risk is, as I mentioned before, do you have adequate insurance? Just because you have insurance doesn't mean that everything's going to be covered on your agritourism operation. It's really important to spend time reading your policy and speak to, the insurance company before you make any changes. So make sure that you're really covered there. Do you have the process in place to handle personal issues? So personnel issues. So if you have employees and there's HR issues, how are those issues going to be handled? What workplace safety issues are there that need addressing? If you're going to be, one of the big things that always pops up, I think all of us have heard of OSHA. So think about, making a safe work environment. You're not going to be, if you have an orchard, you're going to potentially put people on the ladders that are going to be doing that. But if you have an agritourism operation, you're not really going to stick your customers on ladders. So also, be considerate too of your employees. And then what transition plan is in place in regards to risk? Okay, so we're just going to spend another, we're getting close on the end part. So I'm going to tend to just jump forward, but you're going to want to spend a little time writing down 5 of your biggest risks on your farm. So they might be the production, the price, financial, legal, or human. And then write down ways to mitigate that risk. So like with examples, if you have a safety concern, you have safety you want to take in, mitigate that risk, but also you always want to make sure you have insurance in place. A marketing plan is really important when it comes down to your pricing and and also determining like what markets you're going to be advertising into. So if you just spend like a little bit of time doing that, but I'm going to jump ahead because we're running close on time. So also the thing that you want to think about is any type of potential environmental issues. Environmental issues and regulations are important for agricultural industries. And then how are you going to address those different concerns and regulations? So some people might be located in different parts of the state, different parts of the country, where things might be a little bit more regulated. I live in the Adirondack Park, so we have a little bit more stringent regulations. Even though you have a farm, doesn't mean that you can just go do anything when it comes down to it. So the other thing you can do is you think about environment issues for your farm operation is also reach out to like your soil and water office, because they usually have an environmental management program. So they could also help you work through some of those environmental issues on your farm. Think about quality control. So this includes for your products into your service. So making sure that you always have a high quality product that you're putting on the market. How important is quality in your marketing plan? And if you're handling food products, how does this address food safety issues? And that's, I think, always really important to think about, especially since we have agritourism operations, is, people are potentially going to bring, their pets on the property. Is how are you going to address that, like that food safety concern? And that should really be addressed too in your business plan is, how are you going to respond, what type of signage you're going to have, and being able to work with the public to still give them a really quality experience. And then how do you ensure quality control from field to market? So making sure that if you're producing any products on the farm, but also this gets down to like, I'm going to bring this back to a service of like sending somebody out to the field to go pick berries or strawberries, is making sure that they have a really good experience. And how are you going to ensure that they have a good experience from the person that greets them, because that's a customer service, but also a quality thing of the overall experience, to checking out, to getting in their car and going home, and hopefully they spend a lot of money. The other thing too is we want to look at is for operations is our implementation timeline. So if you're planning like major changes, the implementation timeline is really critical of how quickly you're going to make those changes. You want to outline the major steps that must be accomplished and the deadlines to complete. And then in the section, you want to discuss the impact on your business while the changes are being implemented. So this even includes thinking about some of those like services that you have on your farm operation. I'm going to give you an example. Like last year, we didn't harvest all the lavender in the field. I ended up hedging a lot of it down. And so that was really frustrating. Felt like I saw a lot of money get chopped down with the hedger. So I couldn't make because of the quality, I couldn't make a change right then for my farm operation. So, and what the thought is for this year is one thing that really did well for the farm was wreath making workshops. So like, this gets into the timing. It's like, couldn't make a change right then, but the plan is for this year is to increase the number of wreath making workshops to use the lavender. Because we figured out each of those wreath does, I think like between 1,200 and 1,600 stems. So that takes out a whole bunch of plants, harvests them, I get revenue back of it. So it's something I couldn't change right then for the season, but now I have enough prep time to make sure I have instructors available, make sure I grow quality product and then have everything set in place with how I'm going to implement that onto the farm operation. So these are some examples that are in, they're in AgPlan of different production and services that are being provided at Lakeshore Orchard. So this just gives an overall example of how, those different steps that I kind of mentioned is how this operation laid out, what type of apples are growing. They did a description, all the different varieties, explain how they're sold via UPIC in the retail shop. So it's really good and I'm going to jump into AgPlan in just in a couple slides, is to see how things are structured. It's your business plan. You just can structure it however you want. But I think these examples give a really good layout of explaining like what the product is, how it's being sold, and it's very simplified. So this gives an example of inventory management at this Lakeshore Orchard. So it talks about the business permits, the filing for the LLCs being placed with the New York Department of State, information about different food service permits that are required by New York State and Ag Markets and New York State Department of Health, and then other regulations. So they don't offer any petting zoo or have any exposure to farm animals. This is something that they want to potentially do in the future, but they'll need to have a license for their petting zoo to do that. So that's thinking about towards the future of what they want to do. And they're listing it directly in their business plan. And then we look at the risk management side. This jumps into the legal risk management, the production risk, and the management risk. And then this one gives an examples of an implementation timeline of how this operation is going to be doing. And, I think everybody will phrase this differently. This is in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, however you want to put it as a timeline, or if you have specifics, really want to get into detail-oriented. And I'm going to jump right into, as some people haven't already been doing, is there an AgPlan? But I just want to highlight if people are thinking about jumping into this. So I have 2 different business plans going on, and this is more my Adirondack Mountain Farm is, last week, they did an overview of what the business plan book looks like, but there's the executive summary and the business description is something that hopefully you guys worked on completing. And then the next section coming up for you guys to complete would be this operations part. And if you weren't here before, on the bottom part, there's like a little, you can click on these tips. So it has information, different resources that are available per section, for each of these little sections. And then mentioned before that the example of it, there's different examples. There's 3 of them. Not all of them are have all the descriptions behind it, but you can give it, these give an example of what other operations look like in regards to their business plan. So the next, as we mentioned today, we went over like section of operations. So we talked about products and services, customer service, inventory management, licensing permits and regulations, risk management, environmental issues, quality control, and then the an implementation plan. But the homework for next week is going to be filling out those sections that I just showed you in AgPlan. And then next Tuesday is going to be the marketing session. And is Claudia doing that one, Lisa?
Kelly Hepler, who's actually with us
Kelly.
today. She's here today. Kelly, do you want to unmute and say hi and introduce yourself? Don't mean to put you on the spot if you weren't planning on that.
Hello, I'm looking forward to next week. I'm Kelly Hepler. I have been involved with agritourism for about 25 plus years, mostly in the state of Colorado, and currently working as the agritourism specialist for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association. So focusing a lot on tribes developing agritourism. But look forward to seeing you all.
Yeah, Kelly's a great one to talk about all this because she's a producer herself with agritourism. And she's been the executive director of the Colorado Agritourism Association for quite a few years. That's how I first met Kelly. And now she's in this new role working with the American Indian Native Alaskan Tourism Association. So she wears many different hats and has the producer's perspective as well as the perspective of being involved in different supporting associations. I know we gave you a lot of information today, and the chat has been lighting up with questions. One of the questions I want to quickly just mention is there was some discussion about how do you find an insurer? Who insures agritourism? This is going to vary depending on your location. When I started working in agritourism in Vermont 22 years ago, it was a huge problem. But by now, we've had enough farms working with different insurance agents and underwriters, and we've got some very good options. Still, I mean, there still are issues, but there's enough farms doing different experiences and activities that are happy with their insurance agents and underwriters. And so we're able to share that information. Being with Extension, I can't make recommendations. However, if a farm comes to me and says, I need insurance, I find out what they're doing and I say, oh, okay, here are some other farms that are doing similar activities and here's who they work with in insurance. You should shop around. You should compare quotes. So I realize it's a huge barrier looking, nationally. I can't speak internationally as well because the liability rules vary across the globe, but certainly nationally, finding appropriate insurance is a major concern and a major barrier. And it's something that the NAFTMA International Agritourism Association has been working on. So if you're from a state where you're having a hard time finding insurance agents, reach out to us, or for now, you can put that in your business plan as, red flag, this is something I need to work on. This is one more thing I wanted to mention is there's a lot of really interesting questions in chat. And so I wanted to emphasize as you're going through AgPlan, whether you're doing it in paper or as you're going through AgPlan, don't feel like you need to answer every question. These questions, these prompts are here as guides. And you may look at some things and go, not really relevant for me, or whoa, that's not something I'm ready to think about. There also were really good questions about LLCs versus C Corps. We're going to get to that a little later on. And a number of questions were very specific for your businesses. So that's where going through this process of writing a business plan will be very helpful, because you can get into the weeds. Only go as far into the weeds as you want. We had questions about how much detail is necessary. This is your business plan. You know, at some point you may be working with a lender, or, you know, applying for a grant or somewhere else where you may need certain parts. For now, this is your business plan. Do as much or as little detail as you feel comfortable with. And as you're working on your homework for this week or for last week, or even just bouncing around an AgPlan and going ahead, you don't have to wait for us. We've got a phone number, we've got an email address for the Center for Farm Financial Management, and we will post this recording along with the slides and resources we mentioned today on the website gouvm.edu AgPlan. One more thing that we really want to help you with. So I'm in Vermont, especially farms that are in Vermont are going to be, I can give them information about insurance agents. We can connect them with people on our team who can work one-on-one with business planning. But if you're in New York or California, or, you know, if you're in another country, fill out this survey. And there's a question in this survey that says, do you want to be connected with a business planning consultant or expert in your region? And we're going to do our best to help you make those connections. So for now, you know, do what you can in AgPlan or on paper. This is a first draft for many of you. This is just a starting point. And know that we're going to be talking about a lot of these issues in the next 5 weeks, but we can only do so much in these 1-hour sessions. And that's where we're going to work to help as many of you as possible connect with one-on-one business planning experts to take you to the next level. Lindsay, any final words before we close?
Good luck with everybody's business plan. It'll be great. Just work on it. Just focus and get it done.
Right. Think of it as something in progress. And if you get stuck, skip that section and move on.
Yeah.
There's plenty more sections to think about. Thanks so much. And we'll hope to see many of you next Tuesday.